Okay, so we just started the recording right after you made a remark, something like the neurotic thoughts are coming back and I need to meditate more. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Okay. When is the right time then to do this meditation?
I usually do it in the morning.
Oh, is that when the neurotic thoughts come up?
Sometimes, actually, but I understand what you're getting at.
Okay. Good. Now you're following. All right. The right time to take care of the neurotic thoughts is as soon as you see them. And the right way to deal with them in that regard is to be on guard for them, especially if you recognize that, oh, because of the work or whatever, that the neurotic thoughts are beginning to come back. So then you have the right attitude. Oh, well, I'm going to be watching for those things. And then when that neurotic thought comes, you can deal with it right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
That you see, most students make the same mistake that you just made with that, in the regard that sitting meditation is going to fix the daily life. And that's not going to happen. The sitting meditation is actually a training that would be like training for something so that then you can go and continue that training in a more appropriate setting. An example of that would be karate katas, that a student should practice the kata by himself, his version of it. Do you know what I mean by a kata? A kata is actually a formalized fight routine between two combatants. And so each one of the students will learn both sides of that kata. And that when this kata is learned by both of the students, student A takes side A and student B takes side B of the kata, and then they perform it together while the sensei is watching. But they cannot do that kata together until each student knows that full kata on his own. You understand what I'm getting at? So the beginning is just doing the punches. It's C, like that, or this, or whatever the action that it is, and then these things are put together into a long kata. Sitting meditation is exactly that. It's exactly the same thing as learning the side of the kata without having a sparring partner yet. And so when the students begin to do the kata, they do it almost in a stylized way. But after these two students do their side of the kata for 4 or 5 times and go through the kata, then the sensei say, now make it real. Now fight using this kata. All right, so this is basically what we're thinking about then with meditation is that there are a few things to practice on the cushion so that when you get out into the real world, that's actually the combat.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to train for that combat also. Going back in shadow training is only the first part of the training. The second part of the training is to train for the combat. Now that you've got the movements of the kata down. So when those thoughts that you're talking about, neurotic, you're calling them, we haven't even addressed what that word means yet. But whenever unwanted thoughts, or let us call them unwholesome thoughts, arise, you can either do one thing or the other. One is just to let them roll on and feel bad about things, or the other one is you can see those things and say, aha, I got you. Right then and there. Rather than letting those thoughts roll on, the thing to do is to put a stop to them as soon as you catch them. So the skill that you're developing is to be on guard. And that's that which you would train for the sitting. But then you're going to take that on guardness out to the world. And not only that, but we operate in exactly the same way. For instance, when a student who is in sitting meditation has a particular kind of neurotic thought come up, then his job while he's in sitting meditation is to say, okay, I'm going to be on guard for those kinds of thoughts. We can talk about it as that's the elephant in the room. And we're going to be on guard for when that elephant comes in the room because it tends to take up the entire space of the room. So we train for doing that on the sitting. And it is true that while we're sitting and being on guard and remembering to be on guard and constantly being on guard is a bit of a habit that's growing that then will have some residual effects out in the real world. But those residual effects will rot down to nothing at all within 24 hours if you're not actually continuing that practice. So off the cushion, when those neurotic thoughts come, that's the time to chase them away as soon as you recognize that they're there. So that you can keep your mind in a state of wholesome thought more and more and more often. And throughout the day, less and less often are you in unwholesome thoughts.
Yeah.
That's why we have these little techniques about practicing Sati throughout the day. And you know that we've had various techniques, you and I have done those together. So we need to start bringing those back in to help build up that Sati during the day. Things about the timer, things about watching the hands, things about how you get up out of a chair and how you sit down. These are the things that are going to help build that Sati that's going to help you to remember to be on guard for those unwholesome thoughts that come up. And the right attitude is, in that regard, the right attitude is no matter how many times those neurotic thoughts come up, no matter how powerful or strong they feel at the time when they do arise, still you can throw those thoughts out of the mind and come back to be here now and be in a state of happiness and joy in this moment. And you do that over and over and over and over and over and over and over again until that becomes your new habit of life. So that even though you've got a hard deadline that's going to take a lot of time, the deadline is hard, not you. And therefore you have an easy time with a hard deadline instead of giving yourself a hard time about a hard deadline. And in fact, you might be able to handle the deadline easier if you're joyful about it than if you're miserable about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how we start to practice. The sitting practice is only a practice so that we can learn these skills that are actually needed to be done at those right times. And that's why I would call it performance. In that regard, it's like music, that the piano student will sit privately at the piano practicing. He doesn't even want his mother listening until he's gotten the piece down very well. But then the thing to do is to take that piece into public and start playing it for people. to play it for Mom and Aunt Susie, and maybe even go busking, not with a piano. I have seen pianos on the street when people are busking. Now
Yeah.
they can do it, not big upright pianos because that requires a truck, but keyboards.
Uh-huh.
Um, those kinds of instruments can be, carried in a case and set up right on the street. So in that regard, playing in public. Have you ever played music? Do you
Yeah.
know what it feels like to give a public performance?
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time that you had to give a public performance? There's all kinds of literature. There are words they use like butterflies in the stomach, nervousness, and the nervousness of those performances for the new musician is very much like the neurotic kinds of thoughts. There's an agitation. There's an unsettledness. There is almost a feeling of terror.
Uh-huh.
And that the larger the audience, sometimes the more terror there is.
Yeah.
And so, making public performances or giving public talks in front of a large audience is almost terrifying for everybody that does it. But after they do it a few times, they get used to it. And they would have never been able to even gotten themselves on stage in front of a large audience if they had not already practiced with a somewhat smaller audience. And when I say a large audience, I'm talking about, say, 500 people or more.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now, what we're talking about with playing music and doing it in front of an audience, guess what? You are performing all the time. Just like Shakespeare says, all the world's a stage and everybody's an actor. So there's two things or three things basically. One is everybody's acting on the stage, but they don't know that this is just a stage. They don't know that this is just a big game. This society is nothing but a stage performance. So that's the first stage. The second stage is to recognize, wait a minute, I am on stage. And I need to be alert and awake so that I can perform my part properly. But then the third stage is, wait a minute, I don't belong on stage at all. And the audience looks like it's got plenty of empty seats. Let me go sit in the audience so that I can enjoy the performance and stop being on stage.
Uh-huh.
But now you're you're in that middle, that intermediate place of recognizing that you're on stage, that you've got a job to perform, and it's a whole lot better to be intensely interested in performing that job rather than being, let us say, distracted by the pressure that we put ourselves under while we're on stage. Because that's basically what the young musician is doing, is he's putting himself under pressure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's what you're doing. You're putting yourself under pressure. You're calling them neurotic thoughts, and all you need to do is see them directly and then throw them out. Maybe with a thought of, hey, I don't have to feel that way. I can feel better. Can you remember to do that?
Well, I hope so. Easier said than done.
Actually, no. It's actually easier to do it than it is to talk about it. It really is. To actually do it just in a second. Ah! But to talk about it, it takes me 10 minutes. It really is easier to do than it is. But what you're doing is that you're judging the times that you're not doing it correctly. And then you're feeling bad because you're not doing it. That's one of the major reasons why it's important to mention to the students to not use the word all the time. Because if the students get the idea that they should do this all the time, then that leaves them room to feel bad when they catch themselves not doing it. As opposed to when they do remember to do it and catch it, they can do that with joy. Aha, now I do remember. Because this really is a lot about changing one's attitude from the attitude of a loser to the attitude of a winner. So I know that you keep having these deadlines. Remember the time when you and I were talking about that you would feel tension in your neck and shoulders, especially after you were in a conversation with someone? And so we put it on that you would be on guard for when you're about to have a conversation with someone, to not let that tension come in. Do you remember that conversation we had about being on guard? All right. So now the next deadline, because your job seems to have one deadline after another, one grant proposal after another, that for the next deadline, you can put that up to be on guard for it, that you are not going to put yourself under stress, that you are not going to give yourself a hard time simply because there's a deadline. That you're not a victim of those deadlines. Now, I'm not saying change any work habits, just the attitude about it.
Yeah.
Is this making any sense?
It is, but it's difficult. But yeah.
I got you again. What's difficult?
Sati is difficult.
Yes. Remembering is not difficult. It's just not there, and sometimes it is there.
Yeah.
What's difficult is the attitude that is difficult.
Yeah.
Because you're focusing on the times when you're not doing it, and then calling it difficult. So here's that attitude change, to change it from the attitude of it being difficult into the attitude of, aha, I got it. Aha, now there's Sati. Isn't that marvelous that Sati has come? But a lot of students will say when Sati comes, where have you been? I have been miserable without you. And then we continue to be miserable. So we hit a point of Sati and then we go right back into the hindrances.
Yeah.
And that's something that the very, very beginner does, and that follows us because that's the habits that we have. Those are our habits that have to be broken, and we have to remember to break them. And the way to break them is so very easy, by changing that attitude. Aha, I can do this. Aha, no matter how many times those neurotic thoughts come back, I can chase them out. No matter how many deadlines come by, I will not allow myself to get into the position of giving myself a hard time.
Yeah.
And that needs to be done throughout the day.
Yeah.
That in fact, the sitting meditation for monks in the water, for those who are doing a retreat, their meditation becomes what they're doing all of the time, but that the retreat is actually set up. Every retreat that I know of is set up so that the very things that the students have been doing throughout their lives that keeps them away from seeing the reality of the moment is systematically or just all of a sudden removed, in the sense of when students come, uh, most places will say either don't bring it or check your cell phone, check it in the sense that we'll give it back to you. At Watso and Moats, they usually have a box for everybody, and in that box at the beginning of the retreat, they put their cell phone, their passport, their money, everything goes into that box, including, but I would say probably not books, because nowadays people don't carry books, but even those who carry laptops should put those laptops in that. So books, laptops, cell phones, money, passports, tickets, all of the valuable things and all of the things that the people care about and all of the things they normally spend time with are now put away at the beginning of the meditation retreat, so that now the students can deal full time with that mind. You keep bringing it back and bringing it back and bringing it back with a better attitude and bringing it back with a marvelous attitude and bringing it back with a big belly laugh over and over and over again, bringing it back. But see, in the Western world, sitting down and doing an hour of meditation is only valuable in the short haul. Why? Because now you've got 23 hours a day, never mind sleep. So let's say 15 hours a day. You're spending off of the couch or off of the cushion. And if the student is not mindful, that means that all of the hindrances and all of the worries and all the neurotic thoughts that were chased away during the sitting practice are coming back and not being dealt with.
Yeah.
So who's going to win in this situation? The 1 hour of meditation a day or the 15 hours of hindrance?
Yeah.
So in that regard, a lot of students are missing out on what the sitting meditation is really about. They think that an hour a day is going to chase all the hindrances away. Well, they do while you're sitting, but right back they come, and they come back with a vengeance.
Yeah.
Throughout the day. So now we have to start watching for that stuff throughout the day. So this is basically, Daniel, what we need to do is to reestablish all of those things that you were doing throughout the day, so that you can work with that in your sitting practice. That yes, the sitting practice is important, but taking the skills you're developing in the sitting have to be brought there during the daytime, except in this case, when you're sitting, there's really nothing much to do except either be in hindrances or to remember to come out of hindrances. That's not the same as out in the world, because the hindrances that you have in your mind are now piled on with all of the hindrances throughout the day. For instance, going and meeting people or having deadlines and all of that kind of stuff. So basically, the seclusion is to help us get started. And that we need that so that we can practice that sati, practice that right attitude, practice that right effort, doing those things of the Eightfold Noble Path in conjunction with Anapanasati, to take those deep breaths. Well, now here's the thing that's really important is that taking a deep breath or two every couple of minutes or so in the sitting meditation is wonderful, but the students don't do that throughout the day. We need to remember to take a deep breath to make sure that the mind is oxygenated. In fact, you probably won't be in so much stress or under pressure if you're breathing well. Because when the human feels like that they're under stress or under pressure, they tend to shut down. And one of the things we do is to shut down on the breathing. So the work is actually harder to do in the sense of getting the brain to function correctly. so that the work can be done correctly. But if you'll remember to take those deep breaths on a regular basis, often, 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 then you'll keep the brain energized so that it can do the work. And so anapanasati and that deep breathing, and anapanasati with gladdening the mind, and that anapanasati especially with feeling like that winner, feeling like the champion. This is an important quality to develop. But then we take that development sort of out of the lab and into manufacturing. During the day, we're going to manufacture that joy. All we have to do is remember. Throughout the day, we're going to oxygenate the body. We're going to remember to do that over and over and over again. We keep coming back to the Dhamma, coming back to anapanasati over and over throughout the day. We keep coming back to remembering.
Mm-hmm. So
that when those neurotic thoughts come, as soon as you recognize them, aha, I see you, Mr. Neurotic Thought. I'm the champion here. I'm the one who chooses what kind of thoughts are in this mind. You be gone. I'm going to sit here and enjoy my life.
Mm-hmm.
So over and over and over again throughout the day. So let's get back to that, beginning to watch the hands.
Yeah.
Because that'll help you be in the here now. Begin to watch the body, especially when you're about to go talk with someone at work, to make sure that the body is not going to get tensed up while you're in conversation with someone. Mm-hmm. That you can do things like actually intentionally lower your shoulders. Hey, by the way, here's something that's very interesting. Maybe you've noticed this. Have you noticed that bodybuilders, regardless of how far along they are with the bodybuilding, but the more deeply into bodybuilding they get, the lower the shoulders get. Almost like Alexander Schwarzenegger, he would have his head here. His shoulders don't go out like this for normal. His shoulders go way down, so that his armpit is going to be much lower in relationship to his chest than it would be if he had not been bodybuilding. Now, why do you think that's true? Do you think that it's actually the bodybuilding itself that lowers those shoulders, or does it have anything to do with confidence?
Yeah, I don't really know.
Yeah, maybe it's got something to do with confidence. That in fact, people, how do we use our shoulders for communication? We raise our shoulders by shrugging, which is an indication of I don't know. But it also, the way that we use these shrugs is that I don't know and I am a victim of that no knowledge. I don't know. So there's a quality that happens within the mind because, you see, it's impossible for a human being to know everything. That in fact, just human knowledge is so vast that even though someone on the planet Earth may know quite a lot of stuff about a particular topic, he does not know a whole lot about every topic. And so it would take literally thousands of people to hold all of the knowledge that humanity has. Not one person can have it. In that regard, we are all ignorant. We are all ignorant. There is so much that each one of us has no clue about. We just don't know. Mm-hmm. So here's the question. How are you going to feel about that you don't know? How are you going to feel about that you don't know?
What do you mean, how am I going to feel about that?
When you don't know things, how are you going to feel when you recognize that you don't know things? In fact, you're in a business that's discovering stuff. Mm-hmm. So you want to happily go out and look for things that you don't know.
Yeah.
It's part of your business to happily go look for things that you don't know. But in fact, here you are making those deadlines really hard, really tough on yourself
Mm-hmm.
because you're discovering things that you don't know. Well, that's the way that we are trained in school. We're trained that something's wrong with us if we don't know. That the educational system is not set up for learning, it's set up for rote repetitive repeating. Well, now there's a whole lot of value in that. It makes the mind work strong to be able to memorize something. But memorizing something does not mean that we understand it well.
Uh-huh.
So I remember, by the way, many times at Achan Po, he would do one-liners with me. He was quite excellent at that. And one of the things that he would come up, he would just pass by, and as he was passed by, he would just say the term in English, just not sure, and then he was gone. I think, in fact, he would go to big gatherings and just walk around saying not sure right behind various monks' back, just as a training method to teach them. Things are happening and you're not watching and you're not sure of what's going on, even if you are watching. To keep
Uh-huh.
watching and keep watching. So we have to become familiar with this state of ignorance
Mm-hmm.
because we're not ever going to come out of all ignorance, but we can come out of the ignorance that causes suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the important part. We can deal with ignorance and just enough so that we can come out of suffering, but we're still going to remain ignorant about all kinds of things. For instance, I do not know Joe Blow on Planet X. When I say Planet X, I'm talking about a real planet out there somewhere. See, there's just so much we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so much that we don't know, and yet students are trained to not like not knowing. And so they feel bad when they don't know. An example of that is giving a child a test. Instead of what they want is a high grade, and the high grade means that I know all of the answers. And to make the testing easier, or actually not the testing, but the grading easier, in the very old days, every test was an essay. But that takes time for the teacher to read, but it also is a better education for the students. But
Mm-hmm.
now they normally do multiple choice, and the students are actually taught to guess, to
Mm-hmm.
guess at the answer. So now we wind up being taught in school to guess at the answer of stuff. The kids take that out, and we give guesses, and we wind up being those guesses wind up being held to because I keep guessing the same things over and over again without any real evidence. And so that what that does is it causes us to cling to our guesses. And at this case, we can now call them opinions.
Mm-hmm.
But the Buddha teaches, oh no, don't draw conclusions, don't come to opinions. Don't hold ordinary right views about what is right and what is wrong, but keep investigating. Keep keep with that position of not sure. I really don't know. Let's keep looking.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if that's the situation, how are we going to look? Are we going to look with a good attitude or a bad attitude? Now that we've come this far, let's change the attitude so that we can have a joyful investigation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's say that it's time to go to work and you want to get in your car and go to work, but you got to have the keys. So where are the keys? Where did we leave the keys? How many times does it may not happen to you, but how many thousands of times does this happen every day? People get ready to work and now they got to go look for their keys because they forgot where they put them.
Yeah. The last couple of days, this has happened to me. Is Well, my pattern is that whenever these kind of thoughts come back, I lose basically all awareness of everything. So, like yesterday, I wore my shirt inside out. Today, I forgot my wallet. Then, when I got home, I left my keys inside, and I had to get a neighbor to let me in. So yeah, there's like a teeter scale. Whenever I have a lot of obsessive thoughts, my awareness just completely collapses, which makes everything
Okay,
else more problematic.
exactly so. So this is really, really important for you to retrain yourself, especially with the movement of the hands now, so that you say, I am going to watch my hands. I am not going to be paying attention to these obsessive thoughts. I'm going to come out of those thoughts and watch what I'm doing with my hands. But
So,
going, go ahead.
so with the hands, in principle, you should have hand awareness all the time, right? I know you're going to
No,
say,
not that all the time stuff again. No,
okay,
not all the time. That set yourself up for failure.
okay, as much as,
Whenever you can remember,
okay,
whenever you remember,
okay,
knowing that remembering is a skill to be developed. So you're going to remember things more and more often. And now you hit it really dead on. That when the mind is obsessing,
mm-hmm,
which means when the mind is in hindrance, then your ability to observe all kinds of things is diminished.
mm-hmm,
You don't know where you put your keys. You lock yourself out of the house. All kinds of things can happen
mm-hmm,
because we are. Some people call it preoccupied, but the
yeah,
Buddha just simply calls it a hindered mind. The mind is hindered because it's got objects in it that prevent us from being in the here now.
mm-hmm,
So now you can start to become aware that your job is throughout the day is to, on a regular basis, whenever you can think of it, is to come out of the obsession or any thoughts that have to do with anything that is not here and not now.
yeah.
Opening the door of the house with the keys is something you're doing right now. Setting the keys down on the table is something you're doing in that moment right now.
So is the so okay, so is the awareness just of the sensations in the hands, or is it also of the kind of bird's eye view of this is what I am putting the keys here, I'm putting the keys there? Because you could either have it just as like there's coldness, there's I mean you could do it either way, right? And so I'm
You can do it with coldness or you can do it with warmth. Aha, I'm putting the keys here and I know I'm going to remember them because I know that I'm putting them here.
so which one's better? So which one should I try for? Or
The
should I be
one with
trying for both?
joy. The one with joy.
Okay. But in terms of sensations or in terms of kind of intention, I guess is the word I'm going for. Like, I'm doing this because of X, that kind of awareness. It seems like a different kind of awareness than just noticing the temperature of the phone or something in my hand or something like that. So which one is better to do, or should I try to do both? Or
um, Tell me that again. I'm not quite understanding the
so
dual.
with the keys, so with
Uh huh.
the keys, if I'm gonna pick up keys, I could either just I could either just know that I'm picking up keys and know what I'm going to do with those keys. But one could also, when they pick up the keys, just be aware of the coldness of the keys. So that just the sensations rather than any conceptualization at all. I mean, conceptualization helps, I
I
guess.
I I bet with training you're going to do one or the other, one at a time, so that you wind up doing both.
Okay.
First one and then the other. That in fact the intention of the keys was probably before you even went to get the keys.
So I noticed that when when I'm meditating regularly, I notice the intentions coming well before it, like
Mm-hmm.
very early on. And when I was doing the hand thing, I would notice the thought of reaching out. I would be aware of that because I was used to trying to be aware of the hands. And so rather than just when I touch something, being aware of that, I'd be aware that I was about to touch something. So,
And then when you do touch it, you hold it, and in fact, now you become aware of the sensation that the keys put off, including the coldness. So as you're grasping the keys, you notice and feel the keys as coldness, and then you can congratulate yourself for being in the present moment so that you do feel the coldness. This is
yeah.
part of the reason why we want to slow down the activities of the hands so that we can give, let us say, the whole the whole show, the various components in the show, opportunities for being aware of them. So the intention of the keys, and then the reaching for the keys, and the touching of the keys, and then the experience of holding the keys, all happens almost instantly. And
So,
so slowing things down will help you to be able to divide those various things up.
yeah, no, I definitely am going to get back to the hand stuff. Honestly, I've just basically dropped it for the last month or so. Um, yeah. Yeah, basically. I mean, the same time my meditation's gotten bad, I basically just dropped even the intention of doing the hands or that. So I'll
You
pick
know,
that back up.
do you know how I knew that?
How?
Because you said you had deadlines that were hard. So I said, oh, when things get hard, when the going gets tough, the students always, I mean, it's like the Dhamma is the first thing that they give up when they feel under pressure. The very
Yeah, I'm
thing
not
they need the most.
well, I've basically realized kind of what you said about yeah, I basically always have a deadline. And so I either have to make it work with that or quit my job. It's one of those two. And so I guess right now is kind of a trial period to see if I can make it part of my training rather than an obstacle to it. And if I can, I think that that's the answer. I just got to move on. That's what I think.
Well, wherever you move to in the line of work that you are, there's even going to be deadlines. Now, there may be fewer of them, but they're going to be very, very big when they do come, in the sense of, within the university setting, the question of publish or perish.
No, but what I'm referring to is outside of academic things.
Right. Getting to work, there's a deadline.
Yeah, but it's not really the same though. So not all
I
deadlines are
really,
created equal.
actually, it's not the deadline itself that's created equal, it's our attitude about the deadline.
Yeah.
It's always the attitude about the deadline.
Mm.
To learn to be in the moment. There's an old story. I don't think that it's from the Buddha's time. It's possibly Mahayana, but the point is that a monk is being chased by a predator, a lion or a tiger or something. And as he's being chased, he gets to a place where there's a precipice. And so now he's got a choice. Is he going to stand there and let the animal eat him, or is he going to jump over the edge, or jump over the ledge? And so he chooses to jump over the ledge, but by doing so, he kind of crawls down the ledge and he finds a limb, a root that is sticking out, and he's clinging to that root now.
Mm-hmm.
And there he is with the lion above and the valley below. And that what's he going to do? Well, he happens to notice that there's a flower there. And so he says, my, this flower is so beautiful. And he just hangs onto that limb for a while, and finally the tiger gets bored and leaves. And so then the monk can climb back up. But now that's the point. What are you going to do when you have already gone over the ledge and you've got danger up above and you've got danger below? What are you going to do?
Look for flowers.
Enjoy the flowers that you find. Don't go looking for them. There they are. Enjoy the moment.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's what you're doing with these deadlines, is you're putting yourself in that state of, if I don't get this done, I'm going to die. That's what I mean by when I use the word publish or perish. You see, we put over importance on things. Overly important, like it's a matter of life or death. But almost nothing in this society is a matter of life and death. In fact, almost everything that turns into a life or death situation was because people already had the attitude that this is a life or death situation.
Yeah.
But if everybody had the attitude, oh, this is cool, then nothing would ever become a life or death situation. But humans are not programmed that way. We are programmed from our deep past, out of our DNA, all the way back to really primitive times when things were dangerous all the time. But now humans have gotten a society together that's not dangerous all the time, and yet we still act as if things are dangerous all the time. And in fact, that feeling of danger is possibly the source of all of these, what you're calling neurotic thoughts.
I don't know about that. Some of them are just random, like symmetry and stuff like that. That's not about danger. That's just about nothing.
Yes, but when the obsessive gets into obsessing about something, the starting of the obsession is because of something. And in fact, basically, the obsession of the mind is like running and running and running and running. Perhaps running and hiding in this thought, and then running and hiding in that thought. And my question is, what are you running from?
I don't know. It feels more like an addiction than running from anything.
Okay, so in fact, whatever you were running from has kind of stopped chasing you. And still you're running.
Yeah, I mean, would you say the same thing about somebody who drinks a lot of alcohol? Would you say the same thing about that person?
Mm-hmm. He's running from something. By drinking the alcohol, he's running from something, but now the alcohol that he's drinking becomes a problem. He ran in the wrong direction. He ran into alcohol. And you ran into the wrong direction by obsessing. Now you haven't, as far as just from what I've gotten from you, go ahead, you talk.
This dog I'm taking care of just farted. So disgusting. Oh God.
I'm sorry, what?
The dog that big dog I'm taking care of just farted, but like a lot.
What about the dog?
He farted.
A rose by any other name smells as sweet.
Well, this ain't no rose.
So anyway, we were talking about running from things. And that oftentimes the students will say, no, I'm not running from something, I'm running after something, chasing something. That in fact, this is what happens with students who begin to chase after something by using meditation as a tool to chase after something like enlightenment. But really, if they start to look at it closely, what it is that they're trying to run away from the state of what they would refer to as non-enlightenment, which would then be the suffering.
Yeah.
We want something because we want to be relieved of the feelings that we have that are generated by not having it.
But even after, the first stage of enlightenment, you still have, or awakening, you still have the same shit to deal with, right? Is it just a little bit less burdenful?
Actually, the state of Sotapan, I think that you're mentioning, has a number of different stages to it. That in the beginning, people can think of it as in two stages. One stage would be what we call the path, and the second stage would be called the fruit of the path.
Mm-hmm.
And the fruit of the path of the Sotapan has things about it that are different than the path of the Sotapan, because the path of the Sotapan doesn't have the fruit. Well, what is the fruit of Sotapan? The fruit of Sotapan actually is a fairly complete list. The first item on the list that is the most important and almost spectacular is absolute delight in the Dhamma.
Mm-hmm.
Absolute delight in the Dhamma, which means is that the mind is delighted by living in the present moment, following the Buddhas and being Buddha's path and being very grateful for that. That would be one of the qualities. That's in fact the fruit of the path. The final fruit is absolute delight. But a step below that would be absolute eagerness. Now, eagerness also has quite a quality of joy built into it, that we're eager for the Dhamma, we're eager to practice. And so this eagerness, not just to practice when we're talking about, is practice to sit on the cushion. But the eagerness here to practice is the eagerness to watch the mind. The eagerness is to be on guard for dukkha, to keep it out. Now this eagerness, this calm, also has a quality of dedication, a dedication to the path. So these are the two major aspects of the fruit of the path. But the very first step of the path, the very first one is this one which we've been talking about, is that no matter how obstructed the mind is, no matter how obsessive, in the sense that these thoughts keep coming back and coming back and coming back, the first step on the path is to take the attitude that no matter how obstructed the mind is, I can clean this stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an attitude change. Right from the very beginning, it requires an attitude change. Because you see, absolutely ordinary people who have no clue about the Dhamma, who have been uninstructed, and even though they've been told, it still quite hasn't sunk in yet, that the difference between the noble who is just first taking the first step on the path is that attitude of can do, to where the ordinary mind is an attitude of I can't do it. I'm a victim of it. So in this regard, the obsessive compulsive will go to a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist says, "Oh, please do something because of all of these obsessive thoughts." Okay, that's a losers or a victim's mentality. What the Buddha requires of you, Daniel, is to change that attitude to be a winner's attitude, to become like the Buddha in the sense of a lion. And the attitude here is, I can do this. I can do it.
Yeah.
No matter how obstructed the mind gets, I can clean it out. No matter how often it gets obstructed, whenever I catch it obstructed, I can clean it out.
Yeah.
I can do this. That's the first step of the path. And so you can see how that first step of on the noble path of I can do this, I can clean out the mind, then is the foundation that brings up it to the point of being very eager, to being eager to find. And then the final step of the Sotapan is the delight, the absolute delight that I can do this. Really, this is part of my nature now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so at that level now we have that skill of absolute delight in the Dhamma, but along the way we have been developing the skills of Sati, the skills of right attitude, right view, right effort, right remembrance, all of these path factors, so that now at the state of Sotapan, we can actually, at the fruit of Sotapan, we have the tools, the skills, and the attitude to take care of some of the really deep stuff. One of them would be anger. And a lot of my students have trouble with anger. And so we start working with anger right away with this concept of no matter how angry I get, I can see that stuff and I can stop it. No matter how deep into an argument I am with someone, I can become mindful of it and shut my face. I can shut up and stop arguing with someone. I can shut up and take a deep breath and be happy in the here now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the same thing about wanting things, desiring things.
Yeah.
You can see that I want that, and then we can say, oh, wait a minute, maybe I don't want it.
I've got a question that's
all right,
semi-related. So what is the biggest advantage of using hands as opposed to the breath in terms of
actually, according to the suttas, you would be doing both.
Yeah, okay, so you're saying that the breath to throw things out, and then is that what you're referring to?
Well, actually, what we're looking for is anchors during the day to help us to be here now.
Mm-hmm.
And so focusing on the hands shows us a lot of our intentions about what we want. Mm-hmm. It's very hard for the hands to do something unless there's a desire for it someplace in the mind. Uh-huh. For an example of scratching, like this.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Why do we do that? Because we want something. What do we want? We want the itch to go away. So that's why we start to pay attention to the hands, is because that leads us to watching our intentions. What do we want? What do we want? Now, this is very interesting. What do we want in the realm of Paticcasamuppada? That's what we would call upadana, wanting things, grasping things, which is different than tanha, which is tanha is the absolute clinging, the absolute grasping a hold of something. So the intention or the wanting is actually, if you look at the hand, this is what the mind is doing, and the mind has a hand, and sometimes that hand is the actual real hand of wanting something. And so actually that wanting is actually the reaching out for it. and then the grasping a hold of it. And as we see that done in the physical world, we recognize we also do that in the mental world, and that they're very, very closely related. So there's a feeling underneath that intention. That intention is wanting. And in fact, a lot of people would use the word intention as part of the Eightfold Noble Path as the translation for the word that I use, attitude. They think that they have the right intention to do things, but really the right intention is either based on wisdom or it's based on feeling. And we're talking about the intentions that are based on feeling. An example of that, not just with the hands, but when you get out of a chair, why do you get out of a chair? What is your intention?
Mm-hmm.
Have we done that one yet? Have we talked about using the chair?
Yeah.
All right, so that would be one that's also going to be quite useful. Do it with your hands while you're sitting in the chair, but when you get out of the chair, make sure that you stand, that you don't go from the sitting posture to the walking posture, that you stand up and stand. And at that moment, that 1, 2, 3 seconds is going to be the time that you take that you review why did you get up out of a chair? A chair is a very nice place. Walking is work.
Uh-huh.
So why would we get out of the chair?
Mm-hmm.
The answer is because we wanted something. All right. So let's start looking at those things and getting. And you see, if you start doing this and remembering it every time you get out of the chair, then it'll start happening in many, many other ways too. Because this is merely Sati that we're developing to remember to look at why we want things, to remember to look at our intentions. And so now we begin to inspect our intentions and motivations more throughout the day. The same thing then with the sitting down in the chair, of taking a load off the feet and taking a load off the mind. I've arrived home. I've arrived in the chair.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have to walk now. The work is done. So we can take that attitude with, as we're sitting down, we can take a load off of the mind mentally also. I've arrived. This is fine. This is great. This is it. Let me take a deep breath, relax myself, and really enjoy this moment.
Uh-huh.
And so you practice that whenever you get out of a chair, and most office people will admit that they get in and out of a chair sometimes somewhere between 10 and 30 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 10 to 30 times a day for you to practice watching your intentions. And when you come and sit back down, and the surprise is, and mathematics will prove this, that the number of times that you sit down in a chair and the number of times you get up out of a chair is going to be the same over a particular period of time.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, if you sleep in bed, when you get up in the morning, eventually you're going to sit down one time, and then the last time that you get up out of a chair is to go to sleep. So the number of times that you sit down will be matched by the number of times that you get up.
Yeah.
So that gives you double, that chair gives you double the number of times to be mindful.
Uh-huh.
Mindful when you get out of it and mindful when you get into it. And so that's an advantage then, in the sense that whatever you're doing in your sitting practice, and I strongly recommend a sitting practice, but in the sitting practice, you're going to develop the skills that then you're going to have on whenever you sit down. That in fact, whenever you sit down, it's almost like the full-blown anapanasati that you want to do. Make sure that you gladden the mind and give yourself joy. Make sure you develop the attitude of a winner. I can do this. I'm a winner. Wow, look what that, I really, really sat down in the chair well that time. I am an excellent sit downer.
Mm-hmm.
And play with this. Make it a game. Make it enjoyable.
Yeah. I think I've got to take the dog on a walk in a minute, because I think he's about to go to the bathroom in my place. But
You can see that when they start moving around. So yes.
Yeah, that's what he's doing. So yeah, I think that one of the reasons the hand thing was hard for me. So the clicker thing, I got pretty good at that.
Okay. We'll go back to it.
But I want to try the hand thing, but I want to try it a little differently. So, because I like the idea of just being able to do it anywhere without needing a clicker.
Yeah, you don't need the clicker.
Yeah. So what I think that my obstacle was with it when I tried it before without the clicker was that I would try to do too many things at once. So I try to be aware, and then I try to come back to the here now, and then I try to, like, I had a list of things that I was doing that we've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
I think that maybe I should just try just the Sati at first and see if I can increase my Sati without doing anything else. I mean, obviously, if I have things in my head when I'm aware of it, then I would get rid of them.
Okay. If you're going to have, we do actually need all four of these things. Right effort rather than wrong effort with your sati and attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Those three path factors with the overarching one of right view. So those things are needed. That gladdening the mind, that change of attitude is key. Sati alone, like I said, you can have a hindrance, you can recognize a hindrance, and then just go right back into hindrances. So Sati on its own, even though it's the most important skill, it has to be followed up. And in this case, by gladdening the mind.
Well, what do you think about just working on Sati first to get Sati really strong, recognizing that the other ones are to follow?
Actually, they should follow. You're right. About a tenth of a second later.
Okay. But you get
Not
what I'm
next
saying.
month. Not next month or next year. They should follow immediately. In fact, when you say to remember what? Okay, that's what we're remembering. And you can put it under the banner of to remember right view. You can put it down to one phrase, and that would be satipanya, to remember to be wise.
Okay, so you're saying that I shouldn't just try to get better at hand awareness without tying it.
Enjoy it. Bring the joy in.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't enjoy this hand stuff, then you won't do it so much because it doesn't bring any benefit. But if you bring joy to it, then it will establish itself in the mind as something useful.
Uh-huh. Okay. Well, I'll go back to the hand stuff.
All right. Go back to it joyfully.
Yeah.
Aha, I can see myself. Aha, I know where the keys are.
Yeah.
Don't have to search for them because I remember where I put them. All right, we'll go take care of the dog.
One more thing, though.
Okay.
Because when I was doing the hands, I wasn't really thinking about intentions. I was pretty much just thinking about sensations. But if the goal in part is to, I mean, it was doing the here now, and the clicker definitely got to the here now thing. But with the hands, I wasn't really thinking about intentions at all. And if that's a big part of using the hands, then I feel like maybe I should at least start just by doing. I can do the here now, but with kind of the intentions of the hands. rather than just focusing on the sensations of the hands. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It
Okay.
does completely. That this is actually by you see, basically what we're doing with Anapanasati is we're doing it for the fulfillment of the foundations of mindfulness. But in this regard, the foundations of mindfulness is a setup for paticca samuppada.
Uh,
And so, actually, the practice of Anapanasati, when done correctly, is the actual practice for the theoretical underpinnings of all of the steps of Anapanasati. All right, and so this point about intention
well,
is a part of Anapanasati.
you cut off for like.
Our internet connection is lousy right now. The screen is frozen.
Okay, I think the connection came back, but it went out
Yeah,
for a little
it
while.
did now. All right. What we were talking about is that Anapanasati is practiced for the fulfillment of the four foundations of mindfulness, but in that regard, it also fits in very, very clearly. In fact, the next time you talk, we can discuss this about how Anapanasati practice is actually for the fulfillment of the Satipatthana in regard to paticca samuppada. Right there at that word intention. That's where we're beginning to focus now, is to focus on the intention of the hands rather than merely the sensation.
Yeah.
So you can see the movement of the hands focusing on merely the sensation is just body oriented. But now we're moving along to intention. We're actually beginning to investigate the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And very quickly after that, working with intention, we'll begin to work with the feelings. How do I feel about this? Why did I have the intention? Why did I want to get up out of the chair?
Mm-hmm.
What were the feelings? What were the sensations associated with that? The same thing then with the hands.
Yeah.
So these are these are tools and techniques, not in the beginning, we'll focus on one or the other and things like that, but eventually this has to become a package.
Okay.
And what is the package? Daniel is the package. Daniel's life is the package.
Mm-hmm.
Everything about it, the body, the feelings, the mind, the objects, the obsessions, the joys, all of those things are part of this package. And the question is, are you going to practice the way so that this package is a happy, joyful, satisfied, contented package, or is it unhappy, obsessive package?
Mm-hmm.
So go back with the hands and do it with intentions now, as opposed to just merely sensations.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited about trying that because that's something I could be more mindful about intentions, like leaving stuff, places, and that kind of thing anyway. So
Actually, almost everything you do has an underlying intention to it.
mm-hmm.
That is the key then. That's the key element to the teaching that the Buddha has on this fourth kind of karma that is neither bright nor dark, and it has results that are neither bright nor dark, but it leads to the end of karma. The actions that lead to the end of action. Think about that. What kind of actions can you have that lead to the end of action? Well, the actions that we have is to see our intentions clearly and start judging them. We actually start going to the point of not acting based upon intentions because we're investigating the intentions.
Mm-hmm.
By investigating, in fact, let us call it the old deep sankharas of fear, anxiety, and whatever like that, we stop the actions of anxiety and fears.
Uh-huh.
That's so. This is the end of action. The actions that bring you to the end of action.
Uh-huh.
And so that's the intention. Start watching these intentions. The intention to act.
Yeah.
Play with that for a while.
Yeah, sounds good.
Play, enjoy. All right, well, go take care of your dog before he pees on your foot or something.
Yeah. He's on the bed now, but I'm so tired, so I'm still gonna take him on a little walk just so he doesn't.
All right, Danny. We'll see you later.
All right.